Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Oxy Live in our historic Thorne Hall. My name is Jessie Orkin, and I'm a senior American Studies major here at Occidental College. I am honored to welcome you all tonight to our final event of the season. Oxy Live is presented by Oxy Arts and Occidental College with the generous support from the Oxy Alumni Class of 1974 and Oxy alumna and trustee Lisa Cosino. Tonight, I am thrilled to be introducing our very special guest, Miranda July. An artist whose work deeply resonates with me. Miranda July reminds me of the enchantment I experienced as a child, the endless questions I would ask my parents to which there was no answer, the limitless ways I would create my own world out of the things around me. As a person who's recently classified as an adult, Miranda July's art helps me find the magical in the mundane and the liberatory in the bizarre. We all have desires and vulnerabilities, and I feel her art takes down the fronts people put up to try and pretend otherwise. Miranda July reminds me that life is random and illogical, and everyone here is trying to make some sense of it, but sometimes there's no sense to be made. Miranda July is a filmmaker, artist, and writer whose genre-defying work spans film, fiction, performance, and participatory art. Her critically acclaimed films include Me and You and Everyone We Know, Kajillionaire, and her best-selling books, including The First Bad Man and the recently released All Fours. This year, she was awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship and named one of Time's 100 most influential people. July's work has been presented at the Venice Biennale, the Museum of Modern Art, and 2 Whitney Biennials, and continues to shape contemporary culture in deeply original ways. Hosting tonight's conversation is a true champion of cultural engagement, Paul Holdengräber. Paul's career has been dedicated to sparking deep and unexpected conversations, most notably as the visionary behind Live from New York Public Libraries series, where he interviewed over 600 of the world's most fascinating minds. At times, it can feel like the script of my life is written for me. Miranda July reminds me that freedom can be found in unexpected places. I am grateful that she shares a bit of her imagination with the world, inspiring us all to let go of the desire for normativity and knowing and strive towards curiosity and connection. Please join me in welcoming Miranda July and Paul Holdengräber.
One woman said, I don't like the way things are going.
Hi.
Good evening, Miranda. Pleasure to have you here. What about that music we just heard?
What about it?
What about it? You love it.
Yeah. It's
right.
it's a song called One Woman, a band called Mechanormal, Gene Smith. I associate it with my 20s, kind of building courage type song.
That's this one line. One woman said, I don't like the way things are going. In 1863, an extraordinary Greek poet was born on April 29th. And he also died on April 29th in 1933. And I'd like to begin this evening tonight by reading this poem to you and getting a sense from you how and if it resonates. And I'll give you a sense of why I chose it, but I'll read it first. It's called Hidden. From all I did and all I said, don't hope to learn who once I was. There were restrictions which affected how I lived and how I behaved. There were restrictions which forbade how, sorry, let me start again. For all I did and all I said, don't hope to learn who once I was. There were restrictions which affected how I lived and how I behaved. My most intimate obsessions and my most private writings, only these can reveal myself. But maybe learning about me isn't worth such effort, such thought. One day, in a world more perfect, another similar to me will appear and will be free. The reason I chose this poem is because I think All Fours does something of that nature. It opens the possibility of a discourse which up to then was very restricted. And so there is kind of a political element to, and an incitation, as you say in one of your wonderful postings in this book, a desire in some way to open and clear the ground.
I can see that. I have like what you just said went into my head. I think I have like a slight inability sometimes when I'm being read to like take it in. Like I don't like to be taught, and I know you're not trying to teach me. I'm just being open in the spirit of conversation. But it's funny how your translation of it, I guess the part about me caught my interest.
The part about you.
Well, you talking about me was woke me up. I'm just, all I can be tonight is honest. So, but yeah, that was the plan with this book, was sort of like, could this conversation that seems, well, non-existent, sort of very secret or uneducated in a way about ourselves and even our kind of most intimate experience of our own bodies as women getting older, that it's oddly unknowing, like we're sort of missing information, and then the information that we usually conjure by talking to each other or between generations has somehow been siloed in such a way that not a lot of progress is really being made when so many other things have been developed so incredibly. So yeah, that was the idea behind it.
But these last three lines speak to me so powerfully.
Okay.
One day in a world more perfect, another similar to me will appear and will be free.
I mean, I get that, but I guess I don't believe in that world that will happen. I mean, I have a kind of, so, but there is the feeling like, okay, this particular topic, when I looked at women younger than me, I was like, they're definitely not going to just be sort of silent and ashamed as they get older, or embarrassed or discreet. Like, there were specific young women I could see, and I was like, oh, this is going to be weird, having tried to be chill about this and then watch them become the age I was and not do that and be like, huh, why didn't I do that? So I was like, well, I'm just going to do it. Yeah. So I don't, yeah. I think just the perfect, I guess a more perfect world, it just doesn't seem like we're headed there.
But you've Miranda, you have, and I'm speaking again about you you have opened the conversation.
Yeah. I'm not, yeah.
Did you expect this response?
Yeah, it's funny, that question, which you're genuinely asking, I've noticed that these days people often sort of say it for me. They say, like, she was, when introducing me, like, she was blown away that her book, created such a sensation or whatever. And I was like, oh, wow, there is this kind of built-in idea that if it's like a woman writing a story that's at all personal, that that you couldn't have had a plan for it to be large scale, when in fact that was, thank you. But I'll tell you, since I enjoy, and you're forced to sit here, like sort of processy stuff. So there's this character, Arcanda, right? And she's sort of kind of like a Beyonce type character. And for many, many drafts of the book, up until really like the last, 9 months maybe of writing it, there was, the narrator was writing a book kind of about perimenopause, and she was gathering interviews with women, and those were real interviews that I did with women that would be in the book, and I would kind of brilliantly synthesize the real interviews, and that would be in all the press, that these are real interviews, and it was going to be really amazing how I did that, that merging of fact and fiction, biography, and then in this story, I'd written this part at the end where, and she was going to break it wide open, right? But instead, Arcanda does it. Arcanda scoops her and releases an album. And she does it in the way that only she could, because she's so famous and so cool and so powerful that instantly, like overnight, the whole field kind of shifts. And women just again and again are kind of saying that this is kind of, I'm quoting actually from the book that I didn't write this way. They're saying finally, which was actually something that women were writing in response to there was a New York Times magazine article called "Women Have Been Misled About Menopause," and I was sort of meanwhile writing this and seeing all these women just, thousands of comments of women writing, finally. So I worked that into the book. I thought that'll be kind of a nice allusion, deep cut, if anyone. But I couldn't figure that out. I couldn't figure out how to do it, and actually then I ran into Rick Moody, who you must know, who hadn't read this book. He's read other early drafts of things I've written, but he heard me kind of going on about this merging and stuff, and all he said was, remember, fiction is the lie that tells the truth. And I just started crying. It was just like, oh, right, that's what I'm doing. It's that easy. Like, I just get to tell a story, and all of that'll be the truth if it's a story. Like, I know how to do that. I don't know how to do this other thing. And that story doesn't even have to be about this that thing can happen in the world. And I can just tell a story of one woman. And so that's my really long-winded way of saying, like, I didn't just plan it. Like, I planned it, and then I sort of took away, I guess, that scaffolding, hoping that it would kind of reappear.
But the
in real
process
life.
was extraordinary. Reading about how this book came into being, 4,000 or 5,000 pages.
Oh, you mean of notes?
Yeah, of notes.
Yeah. If I said that, I was exaggerating.
Well, you know,
But yeah.
let me just say, it's probably on me.
Okay.
I'm rather emphatic, maybe just
Okay.
2,000.
Yeah. Yeah, which seemed really impressive to me, that number. It may have actually been like 1,500. Let's just go there.
Okay. We'll settle on
Yeah.
1,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a building up of notes. I don't know if you ever have this, but if you have an idea too quickly, which is of course what you always want, is sort of like, how am I going to do this? What's my angle? What's the home that I'm going to live in safely and cozily, knowing I'm writing a book and it's about this, you know, or whatever your job. I mean, I know what your job is. I didn't mean it like in a judgy way. I just meant like whatever one's job is, you know.
Yeah. No, my job is just I chat
this.
for a living. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I found it's a little bit like holding off orgasm or something. Like, I found that if you, not that I know anything about that. I don't. I'm like, I think I've gotten that from like, to be honest, like books about men or something. Like, you know, you're holding it, or movies. Like, hold it and then it'll be bigger. And, but I'm like, have I ever held it? Anyways, but with this idea of the book, I was kind of like, I kept wanting to have the idea, and I kept telling myself, and this was new for me, like with everything before, I was like, Eureka, I've got it. And this one, I kept trying to hold off that moment and just keep writing these notes, these disputable number, 1,500 notes. And they were all really just pain and confusion and questions and shame and quotes from other people, just things that resonated with me. And I did that. I started doing that before I made Kajillionaire, which was the movie I made before writing this book. So it was kind of a long time in the end. It was years of that. And then, yeah. So, yeah, that was the process.
You mentioned quotations that you wrote down, and people know that I'm a quotomaniac by profession. And there's one. I mean, there are many lines that I will quote tonight, but one in particular, which came to my mind when reading you. It's a line by Lillian Hellman. And she says the following, and I'm wondering how this resonates also in the context, of course, of your work.
Me.
You. It is about you tonight, Miranda. So,
Okay, I just suddenly was like, am I called? Hold on, sorry.
we could start dancing. No, but no.
Okay.
So, Lillian Hellman says the following, very short. People change and forget to tell each other. I'm going to sit back now.
Yeah. No, that was, yeah, I thought that was good too. Yeah. I know, you always think you're going to be so honest in a relationship, right? But you really have to kind of have your wits about you to not do that, to not forget to sort of keep refreshing and updating. And then you have to have, you know, someone who's willing to not see that as threatening or wishy-washy or, but just kind of like a good thing. And that is relevant to the book. I feel like it was so apt that I don't know.
I love, as so many people I imagine in the audience tonight, your motel room. In counter-distinction to your home, the hotel room in Monrovia is really yours. It's a room of your own.
Hers.
Yeah, and Virginia Woolf really came up in my mind when I was thinking about that, and how that room, in a way, was your cry to freedom.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, I didn't, for so long, I didn't really get that. I just, I often sort of want to be like kind to myself when I'm writing, and it's like, well, what's fun? What's a pleasure? And I think, I hadn't decorated a home, with a lot of resources and stuff, maybe, in my 20s in a kind of punk way. But, and so in a way, it was like an indulgence. And I was like, well, I'll cut all this later. Obviously, this is just sort of me getting my hands dirty in the process of writing. Because it took a long time to realize, like, oh no, this is actually my studio, which I perhaps had at the start of the book begun spending one night a weekend, Wednesday nights, but it took years to kind of put those two things together. And so when she does it, when she's kind of like, well, hers, it's different, but when she realizes, like, oh, this is kind of like this womb, or, Virginia Woolf place of one's own, it felt very like it was just, it was true.
As is my wont, I had to look up the origin of the word room. Do you know it?
No.
It's really quite wonderful. So, a room comes from Old English, room, space. It's a space in extent or time, a scope, an opportunity, also from Latin, rus, open country. Original sense held in late 14th century, make room, clear spaces for oneself. A room is an open space, an adequate space or opportunity for freedom of movement or action. A room for improvement, elbow room, Lebensraum, space to live in. And when I discovered all this, it really brought me back to your story, and the room as an open space, a space of opportunity, a space really of creation. I'm wondering how this resonates with you.
Yeah, let me think. I mean, it's strange. I was having this conversation with a friend recently, who's very happy with her boyfriend, longtime boyfriend. doesn't want to leave him, but is around the same age as me, a little younger. And she was feeling this kind of feeling. She said, like in your book, like something's changing, something has to change, but there's no part of my life I want to change. And as we talked more, and she kind of described what she liked about her relationship, she said, it's almost like I'm a child in it, and I enjoy that, like I'm sort of taken care of, and we talked about that, and I was like, oh, I think, because after a while it became clear that she was kind of curious about what it was like to not be a child, and I just, this was just making me think of that the reason for a room of one's own, if you're in a relationship that spans like a certain time, is that it may be hard as a woman to not be a child within that relationship, which that seems too extreme, but I look all around and I see, and like through the Substack and stuff, often the feeling is sort of that. It's often people are not actually that angry or upset. They just want to get to, women just want to get to sort of grow up, get to graduate, and it's hard to do that within that structure. And so a room of one's own might just be where you get to do that. It seems like a good idea to introduce, and it would make sense, right? Because of like the origins of marriage, and just kind of without getting, all about patriarchy and stuff, it would make sense that this isn't the best structure necessarily for, the absolute outer reaches of your existence, and for men either. And
and you use that word a few times, ecstatic.
Ecstatic, yeah.
It may not be the best arrangement for continuous ecstasy.
Yeah, which I don't. It's a confusing thing to have sort of brought an idea to, when I was writing the book, I was thinking a lot about like this kind of high, this erotic high, this drug-like, obsessive, romantic thing, and I don't really care about that in the same way anymore.
Did it change partly because of the writing?
No, I mean maybe, but I think I just kept living, and I guess the best I can do is think, well, maybe that thing within us, like if you were just to reduce everything to biology and think like, okay, well, now like, what is if the teenage or early love story is really to procreate, like what is the perimenopausal love story supposed to do biologically? And it's like, and I didn't know, I thought maybe it wasn't a common thing, but I am seeing a lot. I mean, after a year of people referring to their Davy.
Their what?
Their Davy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, well, this is funny. I wonder if it's just there to sort of call you the Davy, or this not the Davy, but this part of you, to sort of call to whatever part of you has been starving, and now needs to kind of butterfly out of who you were, and so it's like a disruptive energy, right? Both hormonally and that creates these changes in your life, and so that it may it may just be that. Like, it's okay if it's, if it just pulls you into a new section of your life. Like, I think that would make sense. And so it's not that ecstasy is like boring to me anymore. I think there's like a tremendous amount of pain when you get to the other side of all the obstacles. Like, there's all these external obstacles, oh, if I could only be free, room of my own, whatever. But then you get there, and the big reward, and to my understanding, and this may just be what everyone older knows, but the big reward of knowing yourself is like to just have your breath taken away by a certain amount of suffering that you did unknowingly, and that you now have to kind of contend with and understand. And that's a huge gift to keep women, to keep anyone in a childlike state away from that level of self-knowing, somewhat anesthetized or just very busy with other people's concerns. That's understandable why that would be useful to other people, but kind of criminal.
You directed me to your Substack, which I'm so grateful to have discovered over the last few days, and there is that extraordinary posting you have, where the choice is, free yourself or destroy everything, and be free, and the consequences of that. And there's one line in it that struck me particularly. The leaving part is part of what will strike anybody. But the part that really got to me quite deeply is a question you ask, which I think is such a serious question, which is, who do you want around at the end?
Well, what was it? I think it's like, who do you want to be at the end?
The exact line, I can find it, because I wrote it down. Let me see if I can find it somewhere in these impossible notes. As usual, I don't know where it is, but yes, it's basically, who do you want around when...
Well, I don't think it's who do you want around, because I think I only know this, that it's something along the lines of like, who do you want to be at the end, and like work towards that, because like when you die is what we mean. Because I think all the time.
I can read the line.
Okay.
I found it.
Yeah, please.
Keep an eye on death and who you want to be with as you near...
Who you want to be as you near it.
Who you want to be with. I think so. No? Maybe
Anyone
not.
have the Substack app on there? We'll check that.
We'll check.
With technology. The reason I mentioned this, it's such an important distinction, right?
Sure.
It's either who you want to be or who you want to be with. And as you near, in death. And I'll tell you a little story.
Please. Will give me a moment to recover.
Yes, and our fact checkers a moment too. I was, this was a couple years ago, and I I had just watched, I'm placing it in time, I had just watched that second season of White Lotus that had those Italian girls in it that were so hot. And I was like late to go to an event, poetry reading actually, but I was like, oh, I'm just gonna quickly masturbate before I go, which was a little bit like cutting it close on time, but I was like, I'm just gonna do this, and then I did, and afterwards, I was looking at my hands, and they were just kind of like this, sort of one in the other. I was just like about to get up and put on makeup and stuff. And I suddenly had this really strange romantic feeling about myself, kind of like, oh, it was you all along. And but it was so, and I saw like my one hand in the other, and I had this almost sort of coy, bashful feeling alone with myself, and then I kept going, and I thought, oh yes, every time I've gotten dressed, I've been trying to sort of lure myself, like catch my eye, as it were, and I've had, sex with myself more than anyone. And then I had this thought, which was, oh, and on my deathbed, the only person who I can be sure will be there is me. And in that moment, that seemed like a lot. As far as like something to be confident about, I was like, like, I can't wait to see you there. Like what a moment that will be for us, like, and yeah. Anyways, yeah. There's more to the story, but I'm going to leave it there.
More.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more.
That's really it.
I mean, you can't leave us on this cliff.
I mean, that's really the meat of it, and then the sort of, I would have remembered that no matter what,
Give the side dish.
The side dish is that I then went to the poetry reading.
Who was reading?
It was an Eileen Miles, like, anthology, forgetting what it was called, but a lot of people read, including her, and she wrote, they read an amazing new piece. And then there was a birthday party, actually, for Eileen afterwards, but I had like taken a lift there, and I didn't really know where it was, and there were two people I didn't really know, and they were like, oh, well, we're going, do you want a ride? And I said yes, and I was so tripped out still by this experience I'd had, that I told the people in the car, these two strangers, and one of them said, this is so weird because you're the second person today who has told me that that they realize that they will be they're on their deathbed, that that's the only thing they can be sure of. It was someone I was driving home from ketamine therapy, and I was kind of like, yeah, well, I wasn't on drugs, like this is.
You were just on you.
I was, yeah, and I was kind of like, this. I'm not interested in that. This very profound thing that happened to me, and then I hung out at the party. Picture like chips in a bowl, and then I left pretty quickly, and I was waiting for the lift again. Full circle with the lift, and. I just overheard two people talking, and one of the people said, oh yeah, I want to invite you to my ketamine graduation ceremony. And I turned and I said, oh, you're the person. We both had the realization today that each of us are going to only be there on our deathbed. And she was like, yes, no, it was very, like I realized like we are alone in this life, and I'm not sure. But now my lift was coming, and I was getting in the lift, and she said, I don't know how to integrate this idea, though, into my daily life from ketamine therapy. And I yelled the biggest lie you could ever say in that situation, which was, I can help you with that. Like literally the nature of the thing is that you can't be helped, it's your own work. And then that person, we followed each other the next day, and then she DM'd me asking me out on a date, and I went out with her. And we still go out. But, that is the founding principle. It's an unusual relationship in that, how you always kind of think, like the initial thing does actually kind of set the landscape, the initial point of connection. And I think it really is like we're each on our journey, and we can't, we can make that harder, but we can't really, and that's our pledge to each other, sort of don't make that solo journey don't obstruct the other person, don't make it harder.
Has this experience with your hands or with yourself happened since? I mean, is this something that you now, because what is quite beautiful about it is also the tenderness.
Yeah,
there's something very, very beautiful and tender and vulnerable, and it's as if sometimes I haven't had that experience that you describe. Though
but glimpses, probably.
I'm tempted.
Yeah, I think we all haven't. I mean, it's sort of. I think, I hadn't had that either, but I had glimpses, and I guess that's all I can say is I do continue very rarely, but to sort of, instead of being like, like this kind of energy, to just kind of be like, right, I think remembering that feeling, like free fall into just the moment of existing right now,
I don't know if anybody found the exact quotation, but
I mean, unnecessary to be so smug about my own quote. But it's interesting,
I
right?
stand corrected. I mean, you're
Yeah.
right. No, but it's a huge difference, of course.
Right, and I think
I would say that I don't know if it's a strong misreading or not. To think about somebody like Harold Bloom, whether I'm misreading it because that's what I wanted to read, namely, in a long-term relationship, in a long-term marriage, such as your parents had, such as my parents had. Parents were married for 71 years. You begin to, those questions of the ending and who will be around. So the with, for me, was important, and the be was less important. But of course, the be is more important in a sense than the with, though the with and the be can go together.
I know.
If you know what I mean.
They can, and I'm working on that. But
Well, I'm working on reading properly.
Okay,
anyway,
yeah.
But that's
it could
a whole.
be good for your work. I do have this sort of lone wolf thing to a fault that I thought until recently was like a cool thing about me, and now I'm kind of like, it might be more radical for me to kind of lean against that when I have the opportunity to.
What would it look like?
I mean, something as simple as, okay, like I was having a meal with a relative that I don't see that often, who is like a New York businessman. He's about 70. My dad's cousin. I knew I had to do this meal, and I felt, he's like a lovely person, but I felt stressed, and like I didn't know what was going to come up, and my trans child, and blah, blah, blah. Like, and I was talking about this with someone, and they were like, maybe you should bring your girlfriend. And I was like, that's an insane idea. Like, then it's just doubly worse. I mean, who knows what she'll say, and she looks like a man, and it's just like, my best approach is to just, like, look as beautiful as possible and get through this. I thought, he loves beautiful women. I don't know about that part, but then I was thinking about the lone wolf thing, and I was like, I guess I should just kamikaze, maybe we don't say that anymore, like just get through this in a new way, like for the support and to talk about it afterwards in the car, and there was this moment where he went to the bathroom. I didn't know that this happened, but she told me afterwards. And he just, as he walked by her chair, he went on her shoulder. And I just was so moved by that, this little, and it was like the most loving thing anyone had ever done. Anyways, I'm not that close to him or anyone, apparently. No. Not a lot of close family ties. Anyways, I was just like, oh, wow. Like, here I thought it was just going to be the comfort of talking about how uncomfortable it was afterwards. But the thing that it opened me up to was like a totally different experience, getting to see him doing that to her. I was just like, what is this wild world that's been waiting on the other side? And I thought I was, had it all figured out, yeah.
Again, great tenderness there.
Yes. Yeah, I know, so surprising. Yeah, and he was really okay about the trans stuff. I was so nervous, but he sent me the phone number of a colleague who was in a similar situation. I'm pretty sure he's like 100% against whatever. Anyways, I don't want to go into too much personal details, but trans teenager that I have. And I just thought it was so, like, I can't help you, but here's someone who you might be able to talk to. It was a colleague who also had a trans child. Sorry, I'm slightly losing it. Anyways, I thought that was very kind. I just wanted to not leave you hanging about his possible transphobia. He didn't. It ended up okay, and I thought it was a really lovely way to bridge the gap, to sort of be like, I can't help you, but here's someone I work with who might have something to say to you. Yeah, okay.
So I'd like to talk about this notion of the fluidity of desire.
Okay.
And desire altogether. And I mentioned before a room of one's own. And there's this wonderful passage which I want to read to you from A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, written in, I think, 1929. I read this very same passage to RuPaul at the library. Surprised him, but we ended up dancing on stage together, which was quite something. This is what Virginia Woolf wrote. And I love the tentative and firm nature of, I think I copied this correctly, by the way. She repeats the word perhaps a few times. She says, clearly the mind is always altering its focus and bringing the world into different perspectives. Coleridge perhaps meant this when he said that a great mind is androgynous. It is when this fusion takes place that the mind is fully fertilized and uses all its faculties. Perhaps a mind that is purely masculine cannot create any more than a mind that is purely feminine, I thought. Coleridge meant, perhaps, that the androgynous mind is resonant and porous, that it transmits emotion without impediment, that it is naturally creative, incandescent, and undivided.
It's cool, right?
It's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Where does that reach you?
I was thinking about, while you were reading it, my mind went to that I saw an energy worker a couple weeks ago, and she said that she was talking about the masculine and feminine just as like the right side, I guess, is the masculine side, and that I was so far over to the left, avoiding essentially my dad, that...
Your dad, your father.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
energetically, like, yeah, sort of this masculinity, that I myself was like out of balance, like I couldn't just be sort of plumb in the middle of myself. Anyways, that is one thought I had when reading that, like, oh, right, is that, how do I work on that again? Yeah. That was the
What
thought I had.
about notion of needing both? That we're neither one nor the other, but both together in different proportions.
I know, I mean, I don't even know what masculine and feminine
Means.
is really, like if it's just a construction, so, I mean, for her time, very, very ahead there on that. But I guess they're useful just the way like red and blue, different color, like you name energies, I guess. And so I think of it that way. It's useful to know words in order to learn things. And but I myself I don't know a lot about that. I mean, I look around me and like gender, it just seems, I just can't, I don't see how anyone could know anything about that. Yeah, I mean, except like Judith Butler. I mean, obviously people have known stuff about that, but I mean, really you're talking about the world, what the world has done in relation to these things, and I think Virginia Woolf is talking about a really innermost energy. If I don't know if you can separate that from the world, but yeah, I guess it's just been so perverted by sexism that how would you even know what those things were or what? Yeah, like I used to think. I remember overhearing two friends talking, and one of the friends said, well, Miranda doesn't, they were saying something about like how all us girls, blah, 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 something, and my friend said, well, Miranda doesn't have that problem because she took after her father. And I thought that for a long time, like, oh, that's why I'm a director, or that's, like I'm one of those women who like, but I've long since sort of let that go, so, yeah.
I want to come back to the room, because it's really that room you decorated haunts me, partly because it's in such contrast to the room you left on that imaginary trip, which ended up not being the trip you were going to take, and what interests me there is the difference between permanence and impermanence, and the room becoming the room that you decorate is really creating, in some sense, a home, an anchor.
But in this impermanent
Yes.
place, yeah, right.
And in this place of transience. And so connecting that to the fleeting nature of desire, and how do we know, to go back to Lillian Hellman, how do we know that we've changed and that the desire we once upon a time had is no longer there? And in that piece, in the Substack piece, you say the important thing is to know, when to leave.
Right. I mean, I've generally been advising women right and left not to buy in too hard into their new loves, that it is usually something about themselves that's coming out, and it's just very hard to do that alone, And so someone sees, it's so easy and dumb. I mean, here you've got this person who's been to hell and back with you, your partner, and then someone comes along and they see you in this new way, right? And how wonderful is that, to be seen?
To be seen, to be desired, to feel like you're not trapped.
Yeah, I mean, she's very desired in both places, right? Maybe to desire,
That's interesting.
Yeah, to want something she can't have rather than be wanted, or, so I guess I feel like, I mean, that was okay, that's cool. Don't feel humiliated, but I am curious. Wait, let me get that thought back. What literally was I saying right before? I did this to myself. It's not her fault.
No, this happens to me all the time too.
Yeah.
So this is a moment when we don't know
Oh,
anymore.
yeah. So, I mean, we have all these witnesses who are listening, supposedly.
That's okay.
I just mean who remember what I was saying and can jog my memory.
Maybe.
Yes, right, being seen, and yeah, the sort of easiness of that. But there was a thing, we're just going to sit here all day till I think of it. Yeah, being, having the desire. Yeah, I kind of love this experience too. Everyone's, yeah, don't be so taken. Oh yeah, this was it, that it's just very hard alone. Like, here's where I feel kind of tender towards all of us. It's very hard to just change, within your life without another people. That might actually be what other people are for.
For
You
say in that piece they are like a crowbar,
right,
which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that was sort of, someone mentioned to me when I was dating someone. I mean, what you always say when someone says, that person's just your crowbar, you're like, are you kidding me? No, this is it. But usually they are just the crowbar, the thing that helps to get you out. But I think that that's sort of diminutizing. Like, I think that's a very profound person, and that kind of happens in like another world. Like, it's almost like a spiritual thing, but it's not necessarily meant to be like, oh, now this is my path. This person is now my path. I must figure out how to form a life with this person. Like, I think often that person is just to get you out, but it's so terrifying. Who wants to just be out alone in the cold?
You don't want to be, but then you find yourself to be.
Well, I think that's the perspective from the other side. It seems like, I mean, in the book, this sort of fear of being this like crazy woman who wanted too much and now she's just kind of wandering the streets. I remember having that fear. I mean, my story is very different. It's funny, even my friend the other day said, I have to remember, like,
this isn't you quite.
Well, at all. I mean, and my friends know that because they were my friends all along. They know that my own marriage story is really different, and then they're like sort of reassuring themselves, like, I also didn't do this. I didn't leave. I didn't make some dramatic move. And actually neither does she, just to be clear.
Right.
Like, it's something that's sort of put on the book because I think the reality of like sort of smaller changes without changing everything is kind of unsettling in a way. It's easier to just like throw everything out. Yeah.
I mean, it sometimes does happen in a brutal way. Since you were talking about your own self, I remember someone I was with for 7 years who ended a relationship with this line. She said, it is better to cut than to tear.
Yeah. That's a vagina reference, by the way. I'm not sure if
I've told this story a few times, but I've never gotten
no one
that
said,
response.
Well, I'm just thinking, it's like a weird, I'm not saying I know, but it's what I thought of was like, that's what the doctor says when like when the baby's coming out, like, we're just gonna cut. It's better to cut than to tear.
A whole new meaning in my life has come about.
So let's think, in this case, was she the baby or were you the baby?
Oh, I think there's no doubt. Yeah.
That
I was the baby.
But maybe she was the baby in the sense that she wanted to give birth to herself and she didn't want to hurt you or damage you forever with this tear, and it's better to have like to cut, and then she could be born and you could be not ripped. Yeah. Your vagina, so to speak, that was birthing her.
I've learned so much tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like telling you more stories.
I've just blown your mind.
No. I mean but it is. I mean, maybe I'll use it more as a metaphor, but it is an interesting interpretation of. why we free ourselves from people, why we
Right.
leave, why we move away, why we are bereft, why we don't stay.
Yeah.
What it is to use something that feels like, yeah, it feels like something a surgeon does. I mean, now that it was extremely painful.
Oh, I
It
know.
was
It is
extremely
crazy.
painful, and I've told this to a few people now tonight. Many more people who now know that I have new
Vagina.
parts. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have new parts to my body that I was unaware of. But and I've told it to a few writers. So Elizabeth Gilbert included that line in one of her books. Sarah Broom included that line in one of her books because I think it's powerful. It's a very, and the person who uttered that was herself very, very strong-minded and probably felt like, I don't want a child in my life forever.
Right. So weird for her to read these books and see herself.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if she has,
Okay.
but and I haven't told her to.
We have so many questions for her, actually.
Yeah.
What did you mean?
What did,
We're
well,
still
yeah,
wondering.
Well, I'm still wondering, and I have a whole new interpretation.
Yeah.
But there is a line that I love of the English psychoanalyst Winnicott, and I'd love again for your response to it. Winnicott said, "Tell me what you fear, and I will tell you what has happened to you." Tell me what you fear, and I will tell you what has happened to you.
No, it's a nice sort of algorithm or equation, right? You can put in the thing and then get out the thing. And I'm trying to think, like we could literally do that for everyone in the audience if we were Winnicott. I think also, doesn't Esther Perel have a thing? She has a phrase like that, which maybe is just that phrase that she's quoting. But yeah, I mean, okay, so should we do the work of applying that? Like, what do you fear? Wait, and what's the second part? And I'll tell you what your problem
the
is.
exact line is, "Tell me what you fear, and I will tell you what has happened to you."
Okay. Do you want to tell me what you fear?
No,
And
I
I'll
don't.
Okay.
No.
Who should go first?
No. I think you should go alone.
Okay. And I can see what you fear. I mean, okay, I just traveled down your whole history in Belgium. I just somehow did that and thought about it, but I won't. Okay, so what happened? Okay, so if I'm just gonna see if I can do this with myself. I won't waste much time on it. I'm curious. So it's like a thought exercise you might do alone in your own kitchen. Okay, so what do I fear? Being misunderstood. And what has happened to me? I've been misunderstood. Pretty sure I just broke it wide open. No, I'm sure he had a smarter way of doing it, but I guess, okay, I'm going to work on this in my own time.
Okay.
Come back to the group.
We'll have you back. In closing, well, maybe just one. So I have a question for you, which doesn't come from me, but comes from Esther Perel. So I asked Esther Perel to submit a question to me, which she sent to me today. And this is her question to you. She said, play being at the core of the erotic.
Wait, what was the first part?
Play.
Play being at the core of the
being
erotic.
at the core of the erotic for me. What role does play have in your work, in your art, and how do you see yourself in the world?
Well, that seems like a two-part question
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, I
Esther.
think the last part we might leave for another time.
Yeah. The first
think
part, was
the
the first
first
part
part-
like literally act out something?
Yeah. Please
And
do.
wait, and the thing was being erotic in the...
Play being at the core of the erotic for me. What does play
For you?
have
or-
in your...
Okay. So I should play it being at the core of the erotic for you?
No, for you.
Oh, for me. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No. The
No,
play,
you're like,
no, no. I mean, I love the reversal of roles.
No, I'm truly,
no.
like, she's asking the question.
So she's saying
For
play
Oh,
is at the core of the erotic for me, Esther Perel.
okay.
For you, Miranda
Sorry.
July.
Oh my God, you must be thinking it.
No,
yeah.
no.
It's like two people. Yeah, okay.
So there's Esther Perel asking you a question.
Okay. God, this is okay. I can see how I got confused. And then what is the role? God, you didn't think I would just get so incredibly unable to understand words.
I did.
And then what is the role of? Okay. I mean, I get that it's, I get that it's totally fine for like the brain is the biggest sex organ and so forth. I get that we're all cool with that now. Like, we don't have to be present, in an oppressive way in sex. I'm taking this kind of literally. But the best thing for me is when it can be like with someone, so you're not just playing the reel in your head, and I mean, this is sort of an interesting thing. This isn't even really an answer, and I don't think this is going to be quite the mic drop end of the night that we all want. But it just made me think about how, so like if you're in a long-term relationship, maybe you already have sort of role plays that you do, so you can just go into them really easily. But if you're just having like a one-night stand or something, hooking up with someone, and you need that, to feel turned on, right? To not have it be like rapey, as that's described in the book. Or maybe not because you're older, maybe just because you don't know the person that well and you need the comfort of your own stimulation. Like, they don't know your body, they're not gonna, but you can't. So this was a question. I saw a sex therapist. I had one session with her that was supposed to be gonna be the like get to know you beginning session, but right away in the first few seconds I was like, I'm not gonna work with this woman, like she's too young. And so I was like, I'm just gonna get some tips and tricks, get what I can out of this session that I'm already paying for. And so I said, I posed this to her. I was like, so what do you do in, like, because you can't just be like, hi, good to meet you. So, you're my dad, and mom is right over here, but she's, I don't know, you can't like set up this whole thing, you know? It's just too much to ask, and it's gonna actually maybe sort of kill it. And I just thought it was interesting that she was like, right, you just do it. Like you just embody, this is my tip I'm offering for you. So you just do your half of it. And she was saying she starts it immediately if she's texting with someone she knows she wants them to be submissive, like on an app or something, she'll right away give them a question. No, not a script. She'll just, in getting to know them, ask them like a really hard question that's going to take all of them, that's to answer it. And so they are already in their role just through her being in hers, without having to say like, I like to be dominant, that you just do it. And I just think that's kind of an interesting thing to apply to life too, like you be your half, and then the other person will be kind of forced into their role, and if they don't want to play, well, they can, that'll become immediately clear, but it's sort of like you're being honest in your thing, not by sort of timidly suggesting that you might want to dominate, but by dominating, I just think it's something that we all could put into practice. I'm looking now at individual people and being like, can that person? But I don't know if this is gonna resonate. Yeah, the play in the erotic. Yeah, I guess to finish where my mind went, since I already said that I was a little bit over the whole erotic thing kind of in the book, it doesn't mean I'm like over life, It's just that like now the erotic would be like a metaphor for life, or you would use whatever you learned in the room or with your Davy, like here, in any moment with another person. No, I'm honestly, it's diminishing returns here.
I mean, the lesson to learn there is what exactly? Is to no, I mean
Yeah, okay,
that.
maybe we can work this out together. Well, good, thank you. I think the lesson is, you do all this thinking and trying to figure things out and how to be and what to do, and then there's just kind of remembering that in the moment, you're absolutely free to choose to do what you want, to be different. And that's like the basic unit of freedom, right? And that will change the person you're relating to, and that will, and then it kind of waves out from there. So I guess that's what struck me about what she was saying, is like, well, you are free within yourself to be how you want to be. You don't even have to construct anything to hold that. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to set up the rules of the role play. You don't have to even think of it as a role play. Like, you get to just be how you want it to be, even if that's like very strange or risky or not the rules you agreed on, 20 years ago when you got married or whatever, that's still really exciting to me. I'm not over that. Yeah.
Miranda, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.